What's up, y'all? Today we are going to be breaking down the AFC Championship Bengals half man, half tiger, two-face graphics. So let's get right into it and I'll show you what I did. So to start out with, I have this same texture that I use for all of my playoff graphics this year, and that is just this topographical map texture with a layer mask on it, painted in with an ellipse. So then we have this ellipse that I put in a photo of mine that I actually took in the mountains near Boone, because again, if you watch my last video, I was just saying that I was trying to have the NFL players tied back to the Boone location. So I added another white shape and put the same picture in that shape. And again, all you have to do is click Alt and then click in between layers to make them fall into the shape. So that's the regular picture. Click that in, click that onto just the picture, and then put that on as well. And so that's on top of that. Then one more time, added another ellipse with the same picture and put the same curves layer over top. So all that is just brightening it up. So the only reason I did this was just to give it like a cool texture, almost like tiger-like stripey, you know, it's not exact, but just kind of that feel. So then I added in this texture that looks like this normally, just kind of a leafy texture. Set it to 25% and then set it to hard light, and it just kind of gives it just like a cool, you know, light leaky looking texture. And then I desaturated the photo because in the other graphics I had made, the photo was a little bit desaturated, so I wanted it to kind of look uniform with the rest, and that was just tweaking the colors to make it, you know, a little more colorful. So then I have this picture of Akeem with this layer mask on it, and he's in this folder with this layer mask. So that was like the original picture. I faded it up and then cut out the sides so that it looks like it's like coming out of this white section. And so then I used different curves layers to brighten up his eye and the front of his face to make this look like, you know, closer to the camera and this look further away from the camera. So all it is a curves layer bumped up, and then I just soft brushed it on. Then this is a curves layer bumped down, and I just painted that in and then kind of like painted in right here because that would be a little bit further away. And then we have a exposure layer, kind of making him a little more contrasty. This layer was to kind of tweak the color of his eye because it looked kind of like red and yellow. And so then this layer was an exposure layer to bump up the exposure of his eye, make it stand out a little more. Then this was to, his teeth looked a little bit like yellow just because of the lighting. And so this was just to make his teeth look a little bit more white. So I just painted that in. All it is like a desaturation, hue saturation layer. So I had in this cat eye that I masked out, and then I just put a drop shadow on it that made it glow a little bit because the outside looked a little bit like dark. So I think that just made it like fit in a little better. And a smart filter that made it look a little more contrasty. So then I just brightened it up and made it a little more saturated. And then I thought that looked a little bit unrealistic, so I pulled down the brightness a bit and then I brightened it right back up. See, I don't know what I'm doing here, but I think this was to saturate the eye. These two were just to make it look a little bit more even and make it look right. So this curves layer was to darken the eye a little bit. And then I added in this exposure layer to draw in some grains on his eye. So they're kind of like streaks and stuff. And then we added in the tiger face. So that is what it originally looked like. That's what the tiger looks like. That's its whole face for context. So to me, it looked a little bit weird, and the whole two-face concept would have worked better if the photo of the tiger was shot a little bit with his head tilted back a little bit. So because this photo, his nose is too far away from his eyes, if that makes sense. So if the photo was from a lower angle, his nose would be closer to his eyes and it would match this photo better. But this is the best photo I could find. So his eyes like kind of way up here and looks too small. I mean, it looks regular for the tiger, but it doesn't match up with his face very well. So I just had to go for some tweaks and try and fix it to where I wanted it. And that is basically what I did. I just grabbed a chunk of the tiger's eye, made it bigger, and then just changed the perspective. So that is like what it looks like. And then I just painted in just on top of the other tiger. So we have that. And then I added in a curves layer and just brushed in the dark areas. So like same over here as it would be over here. So I brushed in right there. And then I brushed in back here to make that dark as well. And I did the same thing again with an exposure layer. And then I used a curves layer with the brightness pulled up to kind of paint in right here where it'd be a little bit brighter in certain areas. And then his eye looked like a little bit weird and it wasn't like centered. So I added in this like cat eye photo to make it like line up, match up, and look a little bit more symmetrical. And then I added another curves layer to paint on top of both of them after I grouped it all together. So that kind of like makes this whole part look like closer to the camera. And then use this to brush in a little bit darker areas, like right here, maybe right here, and then like back here. And then I decided the light was coming from behind them, so I wanted to like brighten up the edges of the photo with this curves layer. So that's just set to color dodge. It's not tweaked at all, but if you just take a curves layer and set it to color dodge, it makes it brighter. So we added in this photo, and I just put a layer mask on him to make him fit to that curve right there. Put the inner shadow layer on him, which is just a color dodge, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, so it's 25%. Then another curves layer to kind of put like a little more of a glow on top of him, since the light's kind of like beaming down through here and on top of his head. And did the same thing for him. So I just like masked him into this area, gave him an inner shadow, and then I just tweaked his color because the orange on his jersey was not deep enough because of just the photo and the way it was taken. So that's just a hue saturation layer with the reds tweaked, I'm pretty sure, and then just painted onto his uniform. So this is a shadow layer for the tiger, and what I did here was took the tiger photo, flipped it upside down, stretched it out, put a blur on it, but then I put a gradient on the blur so that it's a little bit sharper closer to him and it gets more blurry as it goes farther away. And then also the shadow gets softer as it gets further away. So that's a layer mask on the actual layer, where over here it's a little bit softer and still over here it's pretty deep. So then the same inner shadow is on the top of the lion or the tiger, and then that same shadow concept I did for his player. So he's kind of like in like sort of a jumping, hopping little step here. So again, it's like a stronger, sharper shadow closer to him, and then as it gets further away it gets softer and not as dark, and that same inner shadow is on him. So now I tweak the color of the whole graphic just using the selective color, and I just go down the line and just tweak it to the color I want it. Then I added in his name. That's got a bevel on it and a drop shadow. It's his first name, same font with a different weight, and then the same effects. And then I did the little thing that I had been doing in the other graphics where I added in like the color of their uniform or the logo and whatnot. So it's just black and orange, and the date and verses and then the logos will be on top of everything so they don't have their colors tweaked or messed up. And then I added in the stars, and they've got a bevel and a gradient overlay, so they've got like lighter up here and darker down here, and that effect is on all of them. It is, yeah, like I said, bevel, chisel hard, inner bevel, gradient overlay, put the overlay at 55 degrees. And then that's just a radial blur, so they're kind of like spinning down through here, and did the same thing with the other side, and they have that same blur as well. Painted in only on the outsides, as you can see. Then I found this overlay, and that's what it looks like normally. So set it to 65% opacity, set it to screen, basically just brushed it off of their faces a little bit. So then I added in the bottom info and did the apply image technique. You can watch any of my other videos to figure out how I did that. That just kind of makes it all come together and glow a little better. Then I added in the AFC Championship logo. Their two logos up here, Bengals versus Chiefs. A selective color, and the App State logos in kind of like a logo lockup. So if you want to make like logos look neat and associate them with another logo, you can just put like some bars in between them, and just between the stars and the logos, I think it all really comes together nicely and looks really neat there. Please subscribe and hit the like button if you want to see more content like this. Also check out my Patreon, where you can access a lot of my PSDs that I'll be putting out monthly.